In the previous video, we finished the story of Möngke becoming the Great Khan. If you have not watched it yet, feel free to click the link to enjoy it. Next, we will tell the story of Möngke's conquest of the world. Exciting content is about to unfold, so stay tuned. On July 1st, 1251, in the glittering palace, Möngke ascended to the throne of the Great Khan, receiving the power that had long been waiting for him. However, at this historical moment, the princes of the House of Gegedei refused to acknowledge this new ruler. What confronted them was a silent mountain range, on top of which was the cold wind from the north of the desert. The people here were accustomed to this loneliness and resistance, and their pursuit of power had never ceased. They refused to acknowledge Möngke and challenged his rule. However, Möngke was not swayed. In his firm eyes was a contempt for challenges and a desire for power. He decided to suppress the opposition with military force and entrusted the military and political affairs of the southern part of the empire, the Han territory south of the desert, to his brother Kublai. In Kublai's eyes sparkled anticipation and determination, ready to face the challenge alongside his brother. In the summer of 1252, the scorching sun hung high, and all things were immersed in the flames of midsummer. In this sizzling June, an order was issued from the center of the empire by Möngke, pointing to the kingdom of Dali in the south. This was an exciting order, communicated to his brother Kublai, causing him to straighten up and take on the heavy responsibility of his homeland. In early July, the summer heat did not subside. In the Grand Yurt, steel-like cavalry were organizing their troops, preparing for the journey to the south. Kublai stood in front of the crowd, his eyes firm and tough, his gaze shining like a torch, illuminating the yet unconquered kingdom of Dali in the distance. The morning fog dissipated, and the sun rose in the sky, bringing new vitality to the earth. On this day, Kublai rode his beloved horse, leading his troops on their march. They were marching towards the kingdom of Dali in the south. This ambitious campaign was a challenge to the future and also a test of oneself. In the summer of 1253, while Kublai was engaged in an intense war with the kingdom of Dali in the south, Great Khan Möngke solemnly issued another command in his great tent. With a mighty gesture, he pointed west, handing over the great responsibility of the western conquest to his brother Hulagu. The wind in June was blowing over the grassland in the north of the desert, stirring up a whirlwind of dust. This marked the beginning of Hulagu's western campaign, where he would lead an army of 100,000 horsemen. The scale of the army was spectacular, with strong soldiers, sharp weapons, numerous war horses, all indicative of an invincible force. Hulagu sat atop his mount, the wind wildly ruffling through his long hair, his eyes gleaming with a fiery passion, a desire for victory and a confidence in the future. He took a deep breath, tucking his ambitious emotions into his chest, then gripped his spear firmly, decisively waving it forward. At that moment, the army for the western expedition surged like a flood, the grand formation advancing under Hulagu's leadership, symbolizing the might of the Mongol Empire being displayed to the world once again. They would march west, regardless of the difficulties ahead. They would proceed steadfastly until they had pushed the reputation of the Mongol Empire to the highest peak in the world. In Shaanxi in August of 1253, the summer heat had receded, but the searing flames of war were ablaze. Kublai led his army to this land, his target being the distant kingdom of Dali in Yunnan. Upon the arrival of the Mongol army, the earth seemed to tremble. That was the sound of warhorse hooves shaking the ground. Even the wind seemed to carry the scent of iron and fire. The Mongol cavalry stood their ground on the soil of Shaanxi, their eyes focused and sharp like those of a cheetah, gazing at the distant south. Kublai stood at the front of his army, his figure erect and firm amidst the banners and cavalry. He looked south, towards a land he had yet to tread upon but was determined to conquer. He clenched his fist and then swung his arm, ordering the whole army to depart. Under Kublai's command, the Mongol army started to advance like a surging flood. The soldiers' faces were taut, their eyes shining with enthusiasm and determination. Along the way, they would face countless hardships, battling the brave soldiers of the kingdom of Dali, but they had one goal in mind: to conquer Dali, adding a new territory to the Mongol Empire. Their steps were loud and steadfast, each one a testament to their belief in the future victory. At this moment, the entire Shaanxi seemed to feel the overwhelming power of the Mongol army, a force that would change history, an unstoppable force. On January 2nd, 1254, snowstorms were raging in the air, and the freezing weather could not extinguish the flames of war. The walls of the Dali city seemed like a trapped beast, writhing in pain. Each arrow shot, each strike from a catapult, caused the walls to emit deep groans. Kublai stood at the forefront of the battlefield, the cold wind brutally lashing his face, but his gaze was as fiery as ever. He observed the movements on the city walls, having an absolute grasp of the progress of the battle. He knew that Dali city's resistance was futile, the fruits of victory were within reach. Finally, on a winter day when the cold wind cut like a knife, the gates of Dali city slowly opened. King Duan Xingji stepped out, his face pale, his eyes expressing despair. He slowly walked towards Kublai. Kneeling before him, he had surrendered, symbolizing the downfall of the kingdom of Dali. With the conquest of Dali, the vast Yunnan Guizhou Plateau became part of the greater Mongol state. It was a victory, an expansion, adding new land to the rule of the Mongol Empire. In the distant year of 1256, Duan Xingji, the defeated general of Dali, set out alone for the northern desert. That journey, for him, was both the shame of a defeated warrior and an opportunity to seek new hope. Duan Xingji's heart was filled with trepidation. He could not predict his future fate. Standing on the vast grasslands, looking at the distant palace, he could not help but feel a sense of fear. But as he walked into that golden and resplendent palace, facing Möngke, who sat on the dragon throne, everything changed. Möngke's eyes were not as cruel and arrogant as he had imagined, but filled with wisdom and deep thought. Möngke said to Duan Xingji that he saw his loyalty and nostalgia, and he believed that Duan Xingji had the ability to continue managing Dali, to bring prosperity back to this place. Thus, Möngke appointed him as the governor of Dali, and his descendants would hold this position for generations. Gratitude and excitement filled Duan Xingji's heart. He knelt down and bowed deeply to Möngke, expressing that he would do his utmost to make Dali thrive once again. In the summer of 1256, the Mongol army, led by Hulagu, crossed the Amu River, riding their mighty steeds through the rippling water. The river roared beneath their feet, as if it too felt their irresistible power. First on the La people's land in southern Persia, they displayed unparalleled military strength, sweeping through this regime like a storm. Then, their horses flew across the Asia landscape, reaching the country of Mamluks in western Persia. Faced with the arrival of the Mongol army, the soldiers of the Mongol Kingdom couldn't withstand this overwhelming force. They felt despair on the battlefield, either dying from the attack of Mongol bows and arrows or fleeing out of fear. In the end, the Mongol Kingdom quietly crumbled under the onslaught of the Mongol army. In that hot summer, the Mongol army was as fiery as the sun, sweeping all before them, tirelessly incorporating one country after another into the territory of the greater Mongol state. That year, they left deep footprints on both banks of the Amu River, and indelible memories in the hearts of the Persians. In 1258, the wind was biting cold, the sky low, as if it to sensed the approaching aura of war. However, for Möngke of the greater Mongol state, his brother Kublai, and the great general Yuan Dynasty, who were about to step onto the battlefield, the current weather could not affect their moods. Clad in a shining golden armor, Möngke stood atop a high chariot, holding a feathered sword above his head, catching a glimpse of the Southern Song boundary in the distance. His eyes were ablaze with a firm light, the determination of a commander, the resolve of a warlord. By his side, Kublai and Yuan Dynasty were looking forward with the same gaze, dressed in tight armor, holding sharp weapons. Their pale faces showed a sense of determination and indomitability in the cold wind. Möngke raised his sword and pointed in the direction of Southern Song. His voice echoed like thunder in the army. Brothers, our target is right ahead. Southern Song is before our eyes. Today, we shall let the people of Southern Song know who the true ruler of this land is. Three groups of troops charged forward like a ferocious torrent, each taking different paths towards the Southern Song. Every Mongol warrior's eyes were filled with courage and determination. Guided by Möngke, Kublai, and Wolonghitu, they marched step by step towards the Southern Song. They feared neither wind nor cold, nor fatigue. Their only goal was the Southern Song, in a gruesome battle for supremacy. The mighty Mongol Empire and Goryeo, ruled by the Yuan Dynasty, entered into a fierce duel. However, the king of Goryeo wisely chose to surrender in the face of adversity, seeking a glimmer of hope. The Mongols did not trample Goryeo under their iron hooves. Instead, after the change in Choi's position, the two parties reached a peace agreement. The wheel of history rolled forward. Suddenly entering a new era for the Goryeo dynasty, the dove flew gently, and a new alliance was formed between Goryeo and the Great Mongol Empire. Goryeo became a vassal state of the Great Mongol Empire. Although its status was limited, it managed to retain its original government system and traditional culture in relative stability. In other words, Goryeo maintained its identity even under Mongol control, respecting its customs, choosing its officials. These were the courtesies and respect given to Goryeo by the Mongols. This apparent tolerance behind the authoritative approach was a manifestation of the Great Mongol Empire's foreign policy. This was also the reason why Goryeo could continue to exist in the turbulent currents of history. In 1258, like a storm, the arrival of this year in the long river of history left a painful mark on both the Eastern and Western worlds. That year, Kublai Khan's army, like a beast in a flood, marched westwards, aiming directly at Baghdad, the glorious capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, located at the confluence of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. As the flags of Kublai Khan's army fluttered in the desert, in the palace of the Abbasid Caliphate, the faces of the king and his ministers turned greyer than their robes. They tried to use all their military might and resources to resist this storm from the east. However, it seemed that nothing could stop the lion's roar of the Great Mongol Empire. Kublai Khan's army advanced like a storm that had broken through a sand dune, unstoppable all the way. The marching army left deep boot prints in the Arabian desert, raising a dust storm, pressuring Baghdad. When the army launched an all-out attack under the city of Baghdad, the entire city wailed in tremors. In this siege, the Abbasid army fought desperately, but their strength was like a stone in the desert, so powerless before the storm. During Kublai Khan's siege, the Abbasid Caliphate slowly collapsed, and the glory of Baghdad turned to smoke in the flames. When the flag of the Great Mongol Empire was raised over the city of Baghdad, the scene of the fall of the Abbasid Caliphate was engraved on the stele of history. All of this in Kublai Khan's eyes was just another milestone in his pursuit of a great cause, yet for the Abbasid Caliphate, it marked the border of an end and a beginning. In the early morning of July, Möngke, donned in armor, rode his horse and looked out over the landscape of Sichuan. The abundant greenery and bustling towns left a deep impression on him. However, to Möngke, all of this was simply the next objective in his conquest. The army led by Möngke, akin to a ferocious flood, marched relentlessly, demolishing cities and slaying generals, with no one capable of stopping them. Their cavalry crossed rivers, shattered towns, and conquered fort after fort under Möngke's banner. Most parts of northern Sichuan could offer no resistance. This once peaceful and prosperous land was gradually fragmented. Under the onslaught of Möngke's cavalry, cities crumbled before them as if made of paper, and fortresses surrendered as if made of clay. Under Möngke's cavalry, the people of northern Sichuan had only two choices: to surrender or to resist to the death. But Möngke's army brought more than just destruction. Along with fear and chaos, they introduced new orders and rules. Under their rule, the people of northern Sichuan also rediscovered a new way of life. Möngke's army advanced relentlessly until the entirety of northern Sichuan was under their control. This land, which once belonged to the Southern Song Dynasty, had now become the territory of the Mongols. In the spring of 1259, Möngke's army arrived at the foot of Diaoyu Fortress in Hezo. The fortress, located in a valley surrounded by mountains and perched on a steep cliff, shimmered like a dazzling pearl. Möngke had assumed it would be an easy siege, however. The formidable defenses of the fortress surprised him. The city walls were as hard as iron, and the intense resistance from the defending soldiers astounded him. Months passed, and Möngke's army was still unable to penetrate the fortress. Each day, soldiers fell during the siege, and the inability to breach the city walls led to mounting frustration. Möngke stood in his camp, gazing at the Southern Song flag fluttering atop the city wall. With a worried expression on his face, he knew he couldn't remain here indefinitely. He needed to find a way to breach the city walls. Yet, the strength of Diaoyu fortress's defenses perplexed him. The fortress's sturdy walls, the powerful defenders, and the fierce resistance all made it impossible to break through easily. The siege lasted much longer than Möngke had anticipated. Each passing day drained his manpower and resources, and also wore down his patience and confidence. On August 11, 1259, the scorching sun seared the land beneath Diaoyu fortress in Hezo, in the bustling military camp. A piece of news spread like wildfire. Möngke Khan, the great ruler of the Mongol Empire, had died of illness in the camp. Legend has it that Möngke was injured in a battle, but he continued to lead his troops with an indomitable will. However, time spares no one. Continuous warfare and serious injuries progressively weakened him, and he ultimately fell on the land he aspired to conquer. At the age of 50, Möngke's death was undoubtedly a heavy blow to the great Mongol state. His ambition, wise decisions, and strategic insight deeply influenced the fate of the empire. However, the great endeavor he initiated did not stop with his demise. The wheel of the Mongol Empire continued to turn. As an important leader of the Mongol Empire, Möngke Khan's ambition and fearless spirit deeply shaped the empire's destiny. He consolidated his rule with an iron fist and expanded the empire's territory with wisdom and determination, leaving a profound impact both domestically and abroad. In our next video, we will share the story of Tolui's fourth son, Kublai. Please look forward to the content of the next episode. If you like this story, please help us by subscribing and sharing. Thank you.